This podcast is coming to you from Wongal, Gadigal and Birrabirragal country, also known as Balmain, where the Global Centre for Social Justice and Advocacy Leadership is located. We acknowledge the traditional owners of the country we share and agree that sovereignty was never ceded. Hello and welcome everyone to this episode of a JustER podcast, but we're calling this a JustER Next Gen podcast, where we speak to new and emerging leaders in social justice. We are coming to you from Gadigal, Wongal and Birrabirragal country now, and I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we meet today and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Obviously, this week that we're recording this is NAIDOC week, so happy NAIDOC week, everyone. We have with us Robert Karoro. Robert was part of our Pacific Calling Partnership workshops held in Tarawa in 2023. Robert was also a member of our Pacific Fellows, Climate Fellows, who came and spent 6 weeks with us last year in 2024. Robert was working on a digital mapping project for communities in Tarawa, identifying and recording the impacts of climate change on those communities using GPS and database technologies. Since that time, Robert has taken on the role heading up the Kiribati Climate Action Network, Kirikan, and currently is the Pacific representative in the facilitative working group for the UNFCCC at the local community and Indigenous peoples platform. It's an absolute privilege to have you on a JustER Next Gen podcast, Robert. Welcome.
Thank you, Alopi, and for all the listeners there, thank you again, and thank you for this opportunity to have me here on your podcast. Excited and always good to be around Sydney and visit the office here in Sydney. So thank you again.
Robert, tell us about who you are and the journey for you growing up in Fiji and moving back to Kiribati. What is it that motivates you, and what impact would you like to see from the work you have done and are doing now to make a difference to your community and the region?
I grew up in Fiji, that's correct. Was never in Kiribati, so it's not going back. You can say going back to my ancestral land
Yeah.
after. So yes, definitely that's true. So what actually motivated me? I had a connection to the government. I was working in Fiji after I graduated, but when I did my undergrad, I was sponsored by the government of Kiribati as Kiribati based in Fiji. So they recognized my status as an Kiribati in the Banaban community within Fiji.
Mm.
And so they sponsored my degree, my full degree program, my bachelor's program. And then what actually prompted me to go back was I wanted to continue my education. I was planning because I was teaching in as a teaching assistant in the regional university back in Fiji, and I wanted to pursue an academia career. And so I was going through. I decided to pursue my higher education, and was looking for sponsorship. And the only way to get it back to Kiribati is go first serve my body in Kiribati. So that what brought me back to Kiribati. Like I had to serve my bond first, then I could apply for a master's um, scholarship to continue my education, which I pursued. But things had a twist when I reached there. It's been 7 years now. It was just supposed to be 3 years to work, but I got engaged in all this community work. I was getting government. I worked for government for a while, and then got engaged with community work. It got very excited that I just continued and haven't applied again for what I initially went through there for. So that's what came in when I started working with community. It became a passion,
Right.
and I remained there. And I said, okay, my academia can. I came here for some purpose, but you know things change when you go to new when other doors open and you see better opportunity where you can make greater impact.
Mm.
So I decided to take that pathway.
For those who may not be as familiar with the story of Banaba, and the people of Banaba moved to Fiji, and what that has meant for that community, but also the relationship with Kiribati and the ongoing network link, or the community's link with Kiribati, and how that is part of the governance of Kiribati, but also governance of Fiji, and the way in which people of Kiribati who are Banaban descent, who live in Fiji, have a bridging across both countries.
Oh, okay. Yes, if I understand your question, it's something along that line where we, as Barnabans, we were part of Kiribati. So after the war in 1945, grandparents, I remember my grandparents were part of that as well. They were relocated from Kiribati to Rambi in Fiji, and so their status are they are sort of autonomous within Fiji. So they have their legal system there on the island. They under, as far as I know, they are under the Prime Minister's portfolio. So that's the political link in Fiji. And to maintain our link to Kiribati, we also have a seat in the parliament.
Mm,
So we have a representative from our council that usually sits in the parliament of Kiribati. And I was my former my family. I think my uncle was a former MP from Rambi
right,
to Kiribati, and also my grandmother.
amazing.
So that's where we maintain the link between that we did not completely just got absorbed into one system, but we were taken in by the government of Fiji, and at the
Mm,
same time maintain our link, which is why it was easier for me to cross to Kiribati and have my status there as a as a local, as
mm,
a citizen. It's easier because it's there. So that's that's where we maintain the link with Kiribati, and embracing the link that we have with Fiji, because we're part of Vakal One Level side, which,
mm.
when they call for One Level, they'll include Rambi all the time, which are basically are the Barnabas.
Well, you certainly have a Fijian accent or twang in the way you speak. So it's that will so for our listeners, that will to explain to them why that may be is because of obviously this amazing history of people movement, but also of accommodation in the region for the needs of the region. Speaking of that, you've been appointed to a new role in the Kiribati Climate Action Network, Kirikan, as well as roles in the UN FCCC process, as I mentioned in my introduction. Can you tell us more about what these roles are and what you're trying to achieve while in them, and how they relate to previous work you've done over your career?
Okay, thank you for that. Yes, so with the Kiribati Climate Action Network, I'm currently acting as the national coordinator, taking over the former national coordinator, which who was Pelenisi Alofa. And so I took up that role because I had a project working with the Kirikan, which is short form of Kiribati Climate Action Network. And so I took up the role until we get the board to meet and we have everything finalized to get it properly reinstated. So just for now, I'm acting as the national coordinator. And yes, with the other role that I picked up, I got appointed, I got voted in by the region, which is the Pacific Rep for the Facilitative Working Group for the UNFCCC for the local communities and indigenous people platform. So that is a role that I play for the region now, for the
Mm,
indigenous people within the Pacific and local communities as well. And it was my time at the Edmund Rice Centre Fellowship that I got elected. So I was here when the voting went on. So I was fortunate enough to be voted in by the region. I think, with full honesty, I only attended one FWG, was not in the system all throughout, but I was amazed with that when I gave my application and gave my interest, the region voted and they put me as their representative. So it was I was very humbled by how the Pacific were able to put their trust in me, even though I was the youngest candidate there. And also, I wasn't very much involved in the UN processes because I only attended one FWG and it was just last year. And then the same year I got voted in. And so, from the way I see it now with the work I'm doing with the communities or in Kiribati and with this with the LSIP or the FWG, so the facilitative working group is an important platform that will link policies that are being uh, done in the UN spaces, these multilateral spaces, and what we do in the communities. And so now I'm being in these two. So I've been in the communities through KiriCan, and then you come to these multilateral spaces. Now I get to connect the dots or the
mm,
missing link. What's happening? Why is the information's here, or what's being said here, and what's done on the ground? So it to me, and what happens at the multilateral space is for the whole of Pacific. So to me, it was an important thing so that I know how to maneuver myself or the region as well in participating in these spaces and getting the most out of it for our communities and our indigenous people. When we looked at, let's say, the Paris Agreement, we were all happy. There's an agreement, right? We know that from the community level, so we're all happy. Oh, all countries are happy. We have the agreement, but
mm,
it's that agreement is different from a commitment. Because when we
mm,
had the agreement, we thought the money is ready, finance is ready
mm,
to mobilize to the community so that we can implement our projects. But no, it's a different story now when I'm sitting at the multilateral space and see how the talks or how things are done. That's, I'd say, is a good way to really restructure our approach as well from the indigenous and local communities
mm.
on how to get the most out of it and implement it for those who need it the most. So that's how I see it.
Yeah, in regards to that, and this sorry, it goes back to the part of the question: were there parts of what you'd done previously? And because this is a podcast about personal journey as much as it is about what you're currently doing, um, were there elements of your work in government, or were there elements in your previous work that you'd done that gave you an insight into this process that you're currently working on?
Yes, I think it really did. So my previous work with government, I worked for the climate change division, looking at the vulnerability assessments on in Kiribati, which is the same thing that was done in regions, other parts of the region.
Mm,
Not only that, with my work with communities, all of this previous work, it really helps me understand how this system works and now linking it all together, which is something many of us do not realize the complexity
mm,
of, you know, it's easy said sometimes, but what you work with government, when you work with government, the type of language, the type of how you talk, and then you work for the NGO space, you do these, how it's done in the NGO space or the community level. And then when I worked at the university, how academians talk, how
mm,
their line of work. So it gave me my previous work that I've done. I think it was a good stepping stone in trying to maneuver myself in this space, ensuring that um, I understand more on how this process can benefit us
mm,
as a country, as a community level as well as indigenous people, and also in the academia space.
mm.
I hope it answered your question.
No, it is. It's perfectly answers. I mean, one of the things we argue as a global center is around social justice not being realized in one place alone, but in fact within what we call the quad helix. So often in civil society, corporate world, as well as the public space, and also in faith-based and academic institutions as part of this broader grouping of organizations and society that actually, without each playing its role, it's very difficult to achieve social justice or climate justice outcomes in the context of what you're working on now. And it sounds like you're perfectly placed in that regard with the background you've had and also with the work that you've done previously to actually bring that to your current roles. You were last year in 2024 part of the Global Centre. We were then the Edmund Rice Centre's Advocacy Leadership Climate Fellowship Program, which was funded by the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade in Australia. Can you tell us about your experience with it and how transformative it has been, and what you've applied from it since completing the program? Was there any things that particularly stood out for you that you were something new that you'd learned or a new experience that you had while on the program?
Thank you for that, Alopi. Yes, the fellowship that was funded last year by DFAT, I came over with two other from Kiribati and three from Tuvalu. The experience was overwhelming for, I would say, for some of our teams who were here for the first time. Even me, it was sort of like we have to attend all these sessions, and it was a great training opportunity as well to meet to see how this kind of advocacy work or what you want to do for um, your communities as well when you come to international spaces, because that's what we face going to meetings after meetings, and how you send your message. Um, it can be frustrating, you have to meet up at deadlines, at times, and how. So to me, it was a good training opportunity. Some of them find it tiring, which is true, but that's how I experience it now with the work I'm doing outside of it. It's something like that.
Mm,
It's traveling, it's accommodation, and but still finding time to present what you need to present on behalf of the community, behalf of your country. And so that was one that I said was a good training ground for our young leaders who are coming over to know that you're going to expect something similar like this if you want to continue in this role.
mm, mm,
The other one, it was, I would say, it taught them. I saw my team, they were very quiet in the beginning,
mm,
but towards the end of the program, they were talking more than me. And it was at that crucial moment when they get to meet politicians and people they were doing most of the talking. I wasn't talking much. We ran out of time. So right at the beginning, and you would have noticed too, they'll always they won't ask questions, but it sort of gave them their confidence, because the training, also part of the training, they give facts to you give facts to present facts to us, or
mm,
case studies that we could use when we're talking about our points.
mm.
And there was a lot of emphasis on trying to get our own experience to be our story.
Yeah.
Not just what what you pick stories from there, but your own experience, what you actually feel in your community. So that came out eventually. And with one of our, I would say, what I took out of it was one of our the from Kiribati, one that came for us. I took her into the organization, and now she's working for us, because you trained her quite well. That I said I don't need anyone else. I'll take it from here, which is something I was very appreciative of. That I met her here and then we worked together, and then we went back, and then we saw that we could continue this, and we
Mm,
work together. And now she's leading few of our projects in Kirikan, which I would say was very grateful that I had the opportunity to meet her here, not in Kiribati, even though we were both from there,
Mm.
but we met here for the Edmund Rice Centre fellowship, trained together, and then went back and then continued that. So that's a good program, I would say, and it made my job easier in getting people who I can confidently work with, and I know that they got this.
And I think that that was an even greater outcome than we could have imagined. The fact that, we brought together such a talented group of young emerging leaders, and that even within the context of the program, they themselves found opportunity to continue working together and to build on that. You mentioned earlier in your reflection on, talking about the story of the community. Can you tell us and our audience about the current situation in Kiribati, both what it's like on the ground, but also how the community are faring with the impacts of climate change, and the sort of things that communities are starting to think about into the future.
Yeah, so just going back to where when you mentioned and introduced me, like I went to Kiribati, for the first time, and then I had to live there. And when I first made that move, it was funny because most of my friends and community back in Fiji said, "Hey, why are you going there? Everyone goes either to Australia, New Zealand, America, developed countries, you know, to see something." And he was going sort of back, but going like to a country that's like Fiji and then going back to Kiribati. I said, "Oh, no, I need to go because I have links there. That's one. It's easy for me to have access the country. And the other was because of the education that I needed to pursue. But then when I got there and then seeing the situation in Kiribati and how I would say the people are so content and are happy with what they have, whatever little they have,
Mm,
right? Even though it's slowly disappearing,
mm,
right before your eyes. We talk about going to these multilateral spaces, right? And how they're negotiating. How long are they negotiating? 30 years. We're
mm,
coming to COP 30. Does a country with it that has 3 meters above sea level have so much that many years to keep negotiating on?
mm.
That's the reality that I would tell people that, or the listeners that come to Kiribati and see why this is not for negotiation. What we're
Yeah.
going through, it's not for negotiation. Maybe you can negotiate because you have mountains and rivers and big landmass. But for a country that has brackish water because seawater inundation is coming in, land is being eroded away because of bad weather, storms, surges. So you have coastal erosion eroding huge portion of the your land, which you cannot use anymore. You cannot plant anything. Even the soil is not that is not suitable for agriculture. So that's the situation that people, the communities in Kiribati are facing.
Mm,
But they're still happy because they have each other. That's what I noticed, and they build on what they have together to ensure that their community is intact. That's the way I see it. They find a reason to celebrate anything. They always do. They're happy people. And if you go there, believe me, they'll invite you to their functions and all that. But their situation is real.
mm.
What keeps them motivated is this: they have this sense of togetherness among themselves
Yep.
that keeps them, no, we still have each other. And but the situation, like I mentioned, their water is getting brackish. They
Mm,
cannot drink. I always talk about how the rest of the world talks about water security. We need to. Water security is a different language when you come to Kiribati.
yeah.
It's a totally different language because water is gold there.
Yeah.
All right. Clean drinking water is gold there. You cannot use the same water to water your garden, to wash your car. No, you keep that aside just for
mm.
drinking. It may not may be the best quality, but it's there. So that's the situation there. And that's why, um, this is what I feel about what's happening in Kiribati is if we do not do anything, you know, um, it's just gonna keep getting worse and worse. We keep burning fossil fuel. We keep, not trying to go more renewable. Our situation is there. Their situation, our communities that we work with. That's their reality. Might as well, if you do not believe it's happening, come and stay in Kiribati and let's see if that can change your perception on why it's not up for negotiation for maybe another 30 years.
No, it is. And to think, Kiribati has been through so much over the last 100 years, from, being a major place of conflict during World War II. The Battle of Tarawa is a famous battle in World War II history. For two, being a place of the Cold War contestation between the Soviet Union and US at one stage on tuna, as we talked with Anote about earlier in an interview we did, to being also at the forefront of the impact of climate change. This is a country that's been through so much, including independence during that period, and yet is still standing proud, standing happy, as you say, and standing tall in the face of all that into the international community, which you're part of, Robert, and following that great tradition of many Ikiribas who have shown their leadership over many, many decades. The last question, which I'm flipping for our younger leaders who do the podcast, and I normally ask the question on if there was something looking back you would advise yourself about to your younger self. But since you're still a younger self, this question is if there were three things you would like to remind your older self 30 years from now about who they are and and how they should continue to see the world as important, what would they be?
Trying to get okay. It's a tricky question. Okay, I think if I were to look back, right, and say 30 years from now, 30 years ago, where was I? Oh, I was here doing work for, let's say, Kirikan, the community, and the Pacific
Yeah.
region. Okay, so I'll say, um, one, did I made an impact to the communities that I work for? Did I made a change that is there, and I can see the generation 30 years? It's there. The people have better water in their communities. They have in Kiribati, they have their food security is they don't rely on imported goods anymore. They are healthy. The types of food that we get from here, where so it's fresh vegetables and all that. If I'm probably maybe 30 years ahead, and when I look back, we didn't have that. You guys having it now in Kiribati. That's to me, it's a huge change.
Mm,
That's something that I would want to see. Don't not 30 years, but I probably see in the next 5 years it should be in Kiribati. The other would be what have I done in my also in the multilateral space?
mm,
Has negotiation stopped? There's no more COP 49, 46, 40 what? As all parties have come to agree that this is not up for negotiation. We need to put our hands together and resolve this solution so that no one is put at a vulnerable state and no one gets to and all these are answered for. So that is probably something I really want to see, that we do not put a number again beside the COP,
mm.
that we keep adding a number to it.
Yeah.
Because the more numbers we adding, that means the number of years we fail. 30, COP 30 means we fail 30 years to come to a consensus
Hmm.
that we're going to address this. So hopefully, the next 30 years, when I look back 30, say no more. That the world needs to keep coming to the table and keep negotiating whether we should do this or we shouldn't do this. We need to mobilize funds or we don't have to mobilize funds. We need to just to do the just transition. That's one thing I hope to see when I look back. And then I'm satisfied. I said, okay, we did it. We managed somehow, and not just looking again to the youth that are coming up and being in these spaces. I'm glad that the Pacific is leading in one way, and that's youth empowerment,
Mm.
because I see them in these negotiation spaces, young Pacific Islanders, that
Mm.
their government are willing to give them that opportunity. So to me, I'm hopeful that these are the young ones that will come up soon enough to be top lead negotiators for their countries, and they know what's been happening for how many years now when they are exposed to this system. So maybe they could be the change. Maybe they could be the negotiators who will put an end to it.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping for that. When I'm probably what 60, I look back. Okay, yes, they were all in that. No more. So the next COP coming is we start from COP one and said, oh, we've done this, we've completed this, we've
Hmm.
saved this. That's the hope that I try to see, and I'm hopeful. I know I'm at the beginning when I started to understand these spaces. I said, oh, it's useless when going to these spaces and it's all about consensus. All parties have to agree.
Mm.
It takes only one party to say no, and then it
Mm.
doesn't move forward.
Mm.
Okay. So I thought, okay, this is a waste of time space. Okay. Now that, being there for a while, I say, no, there are many ways. There is still light, there's still hope,
Mm.
seeing how this younger generation are exposed to this early.
Yeah.
And they'll be the ones who are going to continue the legacy and be negotiating after. And it's great that they experience it from now.
Mm.
So that's why I see the hope. Say, okay, it's not a waste of time. At least the young ones are training and they're seeing all of this. They will eventually come up. That's why I leave my hope in.
You know, we've got you on the record now. Okay, so we're going to come back to you, maybe not me, but whoever's sitting at the Global Center, to bring you back on in 30 years' time to reflect on what you've said now.
I
So,
hope it works earlier, not 30. Maybe come back to me in 10 or even less
yeah,
than
well, we'll
10
do
as
a
well.
test in 10 years' time. Thank you so much, Robert. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on JustER Next Gen podcast, and looking forward to seeing where you take things from here.
All right. Thank you again for having me, Alopi. And it's always a pleasure coming back to the center and being here with you guys. Thank you for the opportunity as well, and good luck.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of A JustER Generation. Now it's your turn to take action. Change happens when we come together, so be sure to like, subscribe, and share this episode, and consider making a regular donation to the Global Centre for Social Justice and Advocacy Leadership by visiting our website www.erc.org.au/donate. Your support powers real change. Together, we can build a JustER generation for all.
Bako Robin, one more usay.